Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm Sochi Pena. I'm the outreach specialist with Desert Water Agency, and we'll get started here shortly. It's already, 12 o'clock. Just want to give people a couple of more minutes to log on and join us. So we'll be starting very, very shortly. Just want to say thanks to everyone for being a part of Water Counts Academy 2021. This is our 5th year. So I'm sure that everyone is familiar with Zoom, but just briefly wanted to go over some housekeeping items before we get started. Just in case, at the bottom of the screen, you should see a chat, a raise hand, and a Q&A icon. Now, since you guys are not able to see each other, we are asking everyone, as they log in, to please type their name, occupation, and hometown in the chat section. That's just a great way for everyone to see who else is taking part in the Academy. You might see someone else that you know. And it's also just a good way for us to, keep track also of who's here. Now, after each presentation, we will have a Q&A session. You can click on the Q&A icon to type your questions for the panelists or the different water agency representatives in there. You can also click on the raise hand icon to let me know you'd like to ask a question yourself to the presenter. And then I can unmute you in that case. So also just to let you know, the sessions will be recorded, but don't worry, you are not on camera and you are muted. So don't worry if you need to get up and use the restroom, grab a snack. This is the lunch hour. So go ahead and eat your lunch and, just enjoy the sessions. So before we get started, I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about CV Water Counts and the Academy. You are all here obviously because you want to learn more about water, about this precious resource that allows our community and our economy to thrive. And we're excited that you are here virtually, and we're happy to help you better understand local water issues and all that's involved in getting water from, deep in the ground, to your homes and businesses. Like I said, let's see, we are in our 5th year. This is the 5th year for Water Counts Academy. It was launched in 2017 by CV Water Counts. And CV Water Counts is a partnership of the 6 local water agencies. Now, the CV Water Counts members are all water providers. You can see how water delivery is provided on the map there. I work for Desert Water Agency, which is represented in orange on the map. We provide water to the Palm Springs area, including a very small portion in Cathedral City. Now, at this point, I'd like to invite my fellow water agency representatives to join me on camera and to introduce themselves and, just say hi, share their title, and, anything else they might want to add. We'll start with Coachella Valley Water District. I think we have Lorraine from there. If you want to say hi, Lorraine.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lorraine Garcia, Coachella Valley Water District. I'm a communications specialist here, and I am happy to welcome you all to the Water Counts Academy, and I hope you enjoy all the presentations.
Thank you, Lorraine. And let's see, we also have someone from Mission Springs Water District.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Victoria Lort. I work with programs and public outreach here in Mission Springs Water District, which services the Desert Hot Springs area, as well as some unincorporated areas of Riverside County, such as Desert Edge, the Mission Hills Country Club area, and portions of North Palm Springs.
Thank you. And we have someone from Myoma Dunes Water Company as well. Michelle, I think you're here.
Hi, this is Michelle Donze. I am with Myoma Water. We are the only mutual water in this part. We service Bermuda Dunes and a small corner of La Quinta.
Great, thank you, Michelle. And so we also, I don't know if we have anyone from India Water Authority on, or how about Coachella Water, or let's see, Coachella Water Authority or India Water Authority. Any representatives from there on that I might have missed?
Do you see me, Berlinda
Oh,
Blackburn?
Berlinda, there you are. Hi.
Hello. Let's see if I got this right.
Oh.
I just wanted to welcome everyone. It's Berlinda Blackburn with the City of Coachella Water. Coachella Water Authority provides water for the entire service area and some of the surrounding areas. And we welcome you guys to our 5th annual Water Counts Academy. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Berlinda. And any other representatives that I missed from Indio? Anyone else want to say anything? So India Water Authority, you can see they are in blue there. They provide water for, you know, the city of Indio. So thank you, everyone. Appreciate that. So together, we all make up CV Water Counts, and together we work on a variety of regional issues and to promote valley-wide water conservation through rebate programs and education. You know, before the pandemic, we attended local events, as you can see in the photos there, to educate the public and just share our tools and resources on how to save water inside and outside the home. Now, hopefully you are all familiar with Splash. He is our mascot, and he is a great educational tool to help get the word out about water conservation. You might have seen Splash on TV and commercials and on social media. And if you haven't already poked around on the CV Water Counts website, I highly suggest it. It's a great resource to connect you with your agency. You know, if you don't know who your agency is, you can go there and type in your address and find out. And there's also various tools and water saving rebates that are available to you. And there are also lots of educational resources for kids. So if you haven't already, I definitely invite you to check out the website. So now a little bit about the Academy. You know, obviously there's just, you know, so much that goes on behind the scenes in water. And so Water Counts Academy was created to dive a little deeper into water issues. You know, with people like you who are curious about water and, you know, just want a better understanding of local water issues and how it affects your community. Now, the Academy has traditionally been held in person. We, you know, have held them at UCR Palm Desert in the evenings, you know, but because of the pandemic, we can't meet in person. So we are excited to still be able to provide it, except virtually. So thanks everyone for joining. The classes will continue each Thursday in February through the first week in March. You will hear from experts from the local water agencies and different sectors in the community. Participants will also receive a certificate for completing the academy, but you must attend all 5 sessions. Now, here is a sneak peek of the class lineup. During today's class, you will learn about water quality and regulation and how conservation is a way of life here in the desert. And then on the 11th, the discussion will focus on water supply. You will learn a little bit about where, the water that is delivered to your homes or businesses comes from. And then on the 18th, the session will cover water efficient industries, including agriculture, golf, and cannabis. And then on the 25th, you will learn about building and development and sustainability and groundwater. The Academy wraps up on March 4th with a virtual tour of the local water agencies. We'll still take you behind the scenes, but it will just be done virtually via presentations or video tours from each of the water agencies. So that is a little overview of CV water counts and what you can expect during this year's Academy. Now, obviously, you guys are all here because you want to learn more about our water. So without further ado, let's get to our first presenter. I'm happy to introduce Steve Bigley. He is considered a Water Counts Academy regular. I think he's presented about 3 or 4 times maybe already. He is the Director of Environmental Services for Coachella Valley Water District and has been there for 32 years in various roles. He has served on various work groups and committees for such organizations as the National Drinking Water Advisory Council and the EPA. He also currently chairs the Association of California Water Agencies Safe Drinking Water Committee. We love having him present because he really is the expert when it comes to water quality and regulations. So I will let Steve take it away.
All right, I hope you can see my screen.
Yep, we sure can.
Okay, great. And it is in the slideshow format?
Yep, I'm seeing
great.
it perfect.
All right, so I've got about 18 content slides, so they are numbered. If you have a question, note the number and we can hopefully have about 5 or more minutes at the end to answer any questions you have. So let's start with what we all know is the water cycle. Water is continuously evaporating, condensing in the atmosphere, returning to the earth, becoming part of our groundwater or surface water supplies, and then lakes and streams, and eventually oceans, and repeating it through evaporation. And in the process, that water is our universal solvent. And it's, as we learned in our high school chemistry classes, it dissolves everything it comes in contact with. Some things a lot slower than others. And those things that get dissolved become part of the total dissolved solids in the water. And all things in water are considered contaminants to the water. So you'll hear that term used often. And I've got a little table there that shows different types of water. So water that has less than 3,000 milligrams per liter or parts per million, ppm, is considered fresh water. And as the salinity increases, it becomes brackish groundwater. You can see ocean is about 35,000 parts per million, salton sea 60,000 and climbing, and some very hypersaline waters that are naturally very salty, including the Great Salt Lake. So I'm happy to report that in your tap water, it's 99.97% hydrogen and oxygen. So that's great news. But it's that little sliver that's about 3/100% that is those things that are dissolved in the water. And of that, about 1/10,000% is what we put a lot of focus on, and those are the things you might hear in the news, like arsenic and lead and copper, and we provide a lot of attention to those constituents in our program to make sure your water is safe. We're doing research on new elements that are contaminants of emerging concern. We do it through monitoring, treatment technologies. Always want to protect your source of water because that is the most cost-effective way to provide safe water. Our state and federal regulators have regulations to help ensure programs are safe. And of course, water treatment. How we construct our facilities, including the wells, can help protect that water that is being used as your supply for tap water. Once we deliver that water to businesses, we don't want it coming back into our system if certain activities are occurring. And we do that through backflow prevention, and you'll see a device there in the bottom photo. And of course, lots of reporting to all of our regulatory agencies. So in looking at our drinking water regulations, we have both primary maximum contaminant levels, or MCLs, which are based on health effects. So it's to protect the water from any concerns with drinking it from a public health perspective. And then there's secondary MCLs, which are for things like aesthetics, like salt. So it doesn't hurt you, but it is something that may not be aesthetically, it may give the water taste or odor or some sort of appearance. So we have both EPA adopting national drinking water standards, and we have states that can, of course, adopt those national standards or make them more stringent or come up with their own standards. And here's just a chart showing since the Safe Drinking Water Act was approved by Congress in 1974, we've seen an increase in the amount of contaminants that are regulated in drinking water, and currently we're at about 97. So California, may not come as any surprise, leads the way in regulating your drinking water supplies, and which is a good thing for if you're in the state of California. We have 6 compounds that no other state or EPA regulates. And we have 25 that are more stringent than EPA standards, but we're not alone. Other states also have more stringent standards than the national standards. And I just have some examples there at the bottom. One of the latest ones is 1,2,3-trichloropropane. And that was a compound that was in pesticides that were used, were banned in the mid-1980s. And you can see New York and Hawaii have set standards, and that 5 nanograms per liter is in parts per trillion. So we have instruments now that can see these contaminants at very low levels. And EPA has a process to regulate contaminants, and they look at these 3 criteria, the toxicity, whether the contaminant occurs in drinking water supplies, so that they can determine if there's a meaningful opportunity to provide a benefit to the consumer. And of course, it has to be feasible to do. So I want to start by looking at how these toxicology assessments are performed. Typically, they're based on animal studies. Sometimes you have human epidemiology that can play into it, but typically you're using animal studies. And starting right off, you can see that all of these dose response curves, and you see on the x-axis shows the amount of the contaminant. As it increases, you may have a increased adverse response on the y-axis. So right off the bat, you can see on each one of these curves, we're at 100%. And that is the #1 rule in toxicology, that the dose makes the poison. So all substances, whether it be vitamin C or any other essential element, If there's too much of it, it is a poison. So these different charts show different ways a contaminant is regulated. And let's start with the essential element. So we know that we need an element like potassium. If we don't have enough potassium, we have an adverse response. What we like to be in this sweet spot with just the right amount, but if we have too much potassium, we can start to see adverse effects. So that point of departure is shown in the blue circle, and that relates to the point that they are looking for of whether or not a contaminant would need to be regulated or your exposure would need to be controlled. So that's a U-shaped curve. And then you have the more classical dose response curve for non-essential elements where you have no effect until you reach that point of departure, and that might be where you would do a regulation. And that's when you have a robust data set to be able to make that determination. But often our contaminants, we just don't have much data at the low levels. We know when we give the rodents high levels, we get adverse effects, but don't know much about the low levels. So they use what's called a default linear dose response curve. And that gives you a very conservative safety measure and a typically very low controls or drinking water standards. So in addition to determining whether a compound has an adverse effect, they do monitoring programs to see if it occurs in tap water. Do we actually have it in the water to go through a process to set a standard? And then if it is in the water, is there an ability to reduce the levels in the drinking water through treatment technologies? Then they measure the ability to remove the contaminant, the cost to do so, and what benefits there are to the consumers. And that's a process of cost-benefit analysis and determining whether it's feasible to maximize the benefits to our consumers. And typically EPA will always set a standard with a compliance period between 3 to 5 years, depending on the type of contaminant. So before I go into, oh darn, it's not, it's jumping straight to the, I didn't have it in slide control. Sorry about that. All right, so now here's the groundwater basin. And you'll see here, the largest groundwater basin is the Indio or Whitewater Subbasin. And it is on the south side of the San Andreas Fault System. And the San Andreas Fault System splits our groundwater basin and plays a big role in the type of water quality we have. Fault systems are apt to add minerals to water due to the heating that occurs in those areas and other interactions. On the north side of the fault is our Mission Creek subbasin, which is also an important water supply for communities in the Coachella Valley. And from the beginning of time, salinity occurred. This was the Salton Basin. So that area where you see salinity is below sea level. And often in these areas of where they're closed basins below sea level is where water deposits and evaporates. And when the water evaporates, it leaves behind those dissolved solids. And those over thousands of years can leave large amounts of salinity. So these naturally occurring contaminants occur in our water supplies and are a big factor of how we look for water supplies for our communities. So fluoride is one of the contaminants that occurs naturally in groundwater supplies. And when you get near fault systems, you'll find more of it and higher levels of minerals or salinity. And you can see this is an area that we would not be using for drinking water supplies because of those naturally occurring elements. Often in dry lake beds, you'll also see arsenic as a natural component. Arsenic is abundant in natural sediments, and that universal solvent, water, acts to dissolve small concentrations, usually in the parts per billion. Of lately, you might have heard chromium, and we're going to talk a lot about chromium as an example. And then some of the things we're testing for now include strontium, just another mineral, occurs naturally in minerals throughout the valley. And it's yet to be determined if that's one that will have a toxicity and a benefit if regulated. So I'd like to use chromium as a great example to look at the state's process for drinking water standards. It is abundant in the Earth's crust, about 11th most common element. And it occurs in two different forms, which has to do how many electrons are around the ion. Chromium 3 has fewer electrons, and chromium 6 is the one that we hear a lot about, hexavalent chromium. Chromium 3 is essential. We use it to regulate our blood sugar. It's in vitamins. And chromium 6 has been in the news because primarily from occupational exposures, when chromium 6 is inhaled, your body does a great job of converting chromium 6 to chromium 3 through its your gas inhale it. So chromium 6 is typically how you see chromium in groundwater, because the groundwater is an oxidizing environment. So it's forming any chrome 3 that dissolves in the water is going to be more likely to be in an oxidated state. So these natural sediments include the California state rock, serpentine. It has kind of a green appearance, and chromium comes from the Latin chromo, which is multicolored. And in some sediments, it's green, in water, it's yellow. And so that's where we get and you typically found these sediments at the margins of large fault systems. So we have a fault that goes right down the valley. And this chart on the right shows different concentrations of chromium 6 in both the Indio subbasin, south of the fault, and the Mission Creek Basin, north of the fault. And the levels and the colors between yellow and green is about 10 parts per billion. The reddish brown gets up to the highest level of about 22 parts per billion. And then the blue colors are essentially no detectable chromium 6. So you can see it is a natural part of our groundwater basin. And the reason it's become something of our focus for us, not only because it's quite common in groundwater, but also because of recent rodent studies that the state of California has sponsored. So here's the results of a study that was produced in 2008. And it looked at both rats and mice, and ultimately they settled on the male mice small intestine as having the effects to prove that when large quantities of hexavalent chromium are consumed by rodents, you have adverse effects, kind of proving the number one rule in toxicology, that dose makes the poison. But you can see the levels here. The lowest level was 5,000 parts per billion. So that's orders of magnitude higher than would occur in drinking water. But they do this so that they can actually see effects in small populations. And you can see it wasn't until the levels got up to 30,000 parts per billion that effects were seen. And certainly at 90,000, and they actually had a test case at 180,000, but because the rodents became dehydrated, they could not use that data. And these are actual concentrations of what that water looks like when you have that much chromium. And so besides proving the #1 rule of toxicology, it also says don't drink yellow water. So you can see here, even the lowest concentration, you can still see the concentration in the appearance of the water. So I'm going to just kind of real quick show you how the California's process has gone for setting a standard for drinking water for this compound. And it kind of started back in a rodent study in 1968 that resulted in a public health goal that California came out with at 2.5 parts per billion. And then the next year, the Aaron Brockovich movie came out, and yes, chromium-6 was the contaminant that industrial facility had that was the focus of that movie. That brought a lot of attention. Our legislators and regulators said, we better go out and start testing. We tested wells throughout California, and yes, you can see it was found, and you can see a lot of it was found along the fault system in groundwater supplies. And our legislators said, well, we should set a drinking water standard for that. So the Ortiz bill in 2001 said, you got to go out and set a standard. But the data didn't exist. This study failed to make it past a blue ribbon panel because of a virus that the rodents had, which caused the same effects that were being measured. So they had to do a new study, and I showed you the results of that. And sure enough, they were able to use that to set a public health goal based on what they saw in the rodents. And then there were some lawsuits. Environmental groups felt it was taking way too long. And ultimately, a court ordered the state to adopt a drinking water standard at that 10 parts per billion in 2014. And they gave us 6 months to comply. And of course, the amount of treatment that would be required takes many years to install. We worked with other agencies to get another bill, the WASO bill in SB 385, which basically just provided some time to implement compliance plans to come in compliance so that we would not immediately be out of compliance. Meanwhile, another lawsuit was going on looking at the feasibility, the economic feasibility. It's very costly to remove chromium-6 from drinking water. And there's certain steps the state has to do. And ultimately, the state failed to show that it was economically feasible to meet this drinking water standard that they set. And they ordered the state to go back, withdraw the standard, which was done in 2017, and to work on setting a new standard. And now that process is kicking into gear. And there was a workshop last year, and we expect to see a new proposal this quarter. So about 20 years now, we've been working on this, and we still have some more work to do. And it will be important for this valley because we do have naturally occurring chromium-6. So meantime, while all this court stuff's been going on, water systems, a lot of them are on pause. We are currently operating several plants that do a good job of removing naturally occurring arsenic and chromium. And we continue to operate those plants. You can see pictures to the right. Those are ion exchange vessels, not unlike a water softener in your home, just doing a different type of ion that removes the compound and then is regenerated and reused, those vessels. So it's quite a process. It is costly, but very effective. But we're also looking at new processes that might be more cost effective for our consumers. That's always something we strive to do. And so we were doing additional studies, including a full-scale demonstration project, looking at stannous. Stannous is tin. Tin has been used in food products, toothpaste. It's a strong antioxidant. So it prevents, remember, we want to have those electrons in the right state to keep the chromium in chromium 3, which is our essential nutrient. So an antioxidant does that for us. And not unlike vitamin C, that's another very common antioxidant. Stannous is much even more effective than vitamin C, but vitamin C does the same effect. And so we were looking at this, and it is already approved. Not only does it protect your teeth when it's in your toothpaste, but it also protects your pipes from corrosion, because as we know, water, the universal solvent. So we don't want that water to dissolve your pipes. So we have minerals in the water that help protect your pipes, and stannous can do the same thing. So we looked at our water systems, and we chose the system that serves the communities of Sky Valley, Indio Hills, kind of along Dillon Road, north of the San Andreas Fault. And we have our wells here in the Mission Creek subbasin, and it supplies a 19-mile long system where the water is in the desert hot springs area that is not potable. It's got those fluoride and minerals and hot water. So it provides a very long time in the water. So we felt this was a great test for this demonstration to see if this process would work. And so we installed the treatment systems on the wells. Very simple process. The amount of stannous is added at the same level that's approved for drinking water additives to protect your pipes. And it's about the same amount of chlorine that we add to the water. And so here it just shows you some results of a period of time, about 3 months worth of testing that we did with this full-scale demonstration. And over here on the left, you see the chromium 6 level. Remember, we said about 20 is the high. So we did pick wells that had more chromium than other wells. And look at the dark blue is the well water. So the treatment that's occurring at the well. And then as you move to the right, on the different types of sources, you get further out into the water system. So what we're looking for is for these, the light blue and the green, the furthest points in the system to drop below the target level of that 10 part per billion standard that was set in 2014. So it takes time for you to start treating the water and replacing the water in the system. And you can see as the levels drop over time, we were able to achieve levels throughout the water system below our target concentration. And then here in January 31st, we turned off the treatment system, and you can see the levels returned back up to the normal within the system. So this effectively demonstrated that this treatment process not only protects your pipes, but also would comply with that standard. It doesn't produce waste products, which is always not a good thing when you have a treatment process. Often these treatment processes produce waste products, often that may be hazardous waste, and you always want to try to reduce that. So we have a process. We're waiting for the new drinking water standard to be set, and hopefully it will be set at a level that we can have a cost-effective process to comply. So at this point, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Okie doke, Steve, it looks like Oh, yeah. So if anyone has questions, again, you can type them into the Q&A section, or if you want to ask the question yourself, you can raise your hand and I will try to unmute you so you can ask the question. But I do see one question, Steve, from Abby. What happens to the CR6 that is extracted?
So in the process that we would be using, the great thing about that is we are converting the chromium-6 to chromium-3. Chromium-3, remember, is what your body needs. Every day you're trying to get enough chromium-3 to properly regulate your metabolism through the production of insulin. And chromium-3 is needed for that process. That's why it's in vitamins. So that's the great thing. We're just doing the same thing that your body does. We're just doing it out in the water system before the water reaches your drinking cup.
Okay, thank you. Another question from David. What testing is being done for PFAS?
So right now the state is targeting areas that are near landfills, airports, and military bases. So we have done some testing. Right now they're looking at two constituents, two of the many PFAS. By the way, PFAS is a slang term used for those consumer products that are anti-stick, anti-stain, water repellent, and there are literally thousands of these. So the Teflon on a pan is considered PFAS, firefighting foam, the water repellent on our clothes, the stain reduction in our carpets are all due to these compounds. So right now they're looking at two of them. Both compounds were banned years ago, but they're still out there in the environment. And so we've tested our wells for those compounds. We have not, those two compounds we haven't found. And they are being found in other parts of the state, but so far we haven't seen them here. But the list of those thousands of compounds will likely grow. We'll be testing for more in the future. So, and again, those are some of the compounds that are being tested in the part per trillion range. So very, very low levels. And it's still not known. The toxicology is still unknown for most of those. So whether you find it is one thing, but is it something that has a toxicological effect that needs to be controlled? So that will be part of their assessments too.
Okay, thank you. Do you, this is from Kurt, do you have a map of the water tunnels from the All-American Canals, or did he miss that?
That question, and I think you're going to be getting a water resources presentation later that will talk about the water supplies. If you go onto our website, you can see the Coachella Canal that brings water in from the American Canal. It's about 123 miles and it terminates at Lake Cahuilla. Do you ozonate the water? No, we do not. We just add a small amount of free chlorine and the water comes up pure. It doesn't have bacteria and viruses that need to be removed, but we distribute it through hundreds of miles of pipeline, and we want to make sure it stays safe because contractors can dig up a pipe, you can have a break in the pipe. So that chlorine kind of provides a safety measure, a safety net for the water out in the system so that it stays safe. And our home filtrations, so different types of home filters can be installed. They considered point of use. And the ones that use reverse osmosis would be effective at removing all types of salts, including chromium-6, from your water. And a different type of treatment might be a carbon filter. typically installed to make the water taste better by absorbing chlorine, may not be as effective for that. And will Chrome 3 convert? Okay, so once the, yes, chromium 6 will be converted to chromium 3 100% at the well sites. Then we add chlorine, and the chlorine acts to slightly oxidize some of that. And that is really the big finding that we had in our research done in our own lab, that reoxidation is limited, and it allowed us, to maintain compliance with a standard set at 10 parts per billion. So yes, you get a small, anywhere between 20 and 30% is converted back to Chrome 6 in the system. But the good thing is, once chromium 3 enters your body has no mechanism to convert it back to chromium 6. So it will stay in the reduced state. How much water leaks or loss in leaks and evaporation? So I think we're talking about lost water from the distribution of the water to our customers. And typically you're looking at 5 to 10% lost waters. It varies depending on the water system. Evaporation, when we use water, different types of uses evaporate more than other types of uses. But typically for irrigation, you're looking at about a 70 to 80% evaporation, and the rest will return. And that's called irrigation return water, returning to the local water supplies. I think that covers them all.
Okay, well, thank you, Steve. I appreciate that. And just another thing, if any of the attendees haven't already, put your full name, occupation, and in the chat section, if you could do that, that would be great. That's kind of helping us, take attendance, but then also letting everyone else know who is part of the Academy. So again, if, maybe you logged in late, go ahead, and if you could add your full name, occupation, and hometown in the chat section, that would be wonderful. Thanks again, Steve. Really appreciate that. I'm going to go ahead and move on with our presentation. Our second presenter, I will go ahead and introduce her, Jenna Shimon. She is our next speaker. She is the Conservation Manager at Coachella Valley Water District and manages the water management department there. She has 17 years of experience in the water industry, starting in customer service in the Inland Empire, and then transitioning to conservation and rebate programs. She has developed and run programs for the City of San Bernardino Municipal Water Department, City of Colton Water Department, and City of South Pasadena. This is her first time presenting at Water Accounts Academy, and we are so glad to have her with us today. So Jenna, if you want to join us on screen here, that would be wonderful.
Cover my camera.
Oh, there you go.
All righty, let me get my presentation up, and thank you for that introduction.
Oh, no problem.
All righty, are we full screen now?
Looking good.
Great. Well, thank you. Well, welcome everyone to that's participating in CD Water Counts, our water stewards here who are learning more every day. As I said, I'm Jenna Shim with Coachella Valley Water District. So today I'll go over a little bit of the background of conservation here in the Valley, as well as the permanent water restrictions, some of the collaborative efforts, water use in the Valley, and what can you do? So just a high level overview of our service area so you can kind of get a feel. I know Steve had a a map and so in the beginning. So this is the entire valley that's serviced by all the districts there at the bottom. And it's 1,500 square miles of service area across all of these districts, which services a population of roughly 350,000 people year round, with highs of 800,000 during the season. This has 100,000 acres of irrigated land with over 115 golf courses. The average rainfall for our area is 3.44 inches, and summertime daytime highs of 112 degrees and winter highs of 88. So just to give you a feel of what we're working with when we talk about water conservation. So a little bit of background, in May of 2016, Governor Brown issued Executive Order B3716, which was entitled Making Conservation a California Way of Life. And it had 4 basic elements in this order. And it was to use water more wisely, eliminate water waste, strengthen local drought resilience, and improve agricultural water use efficiency and drought planning. And all of these are things that are aimed for water agencies to use with their constituents. And so the legislation that was kind of behind that are Senate Bill 1668 and Assembly Bill 606. Within them are various deadlines and due dates, which have been affected because of the pandemic. You know, with most of us working from home and some variation, it kind of has slowed things down. But we're always working as hard as we can to get through all the requirements of these elements. A lot of stuff is going to be happening here in the near future as far as what our water agencies are going to have to be reporting to the state and working with. But it's very exciting because that means that we're learning more about water use, not just in our area, but statewide. So there's indoor water use studies and outdoor water use studies being done, studies on seasonal variance. So a lot of great things are coming out of this data-wise for us water agencies. So this is all of the permanent water use restrictions, but I'm going to highlight just a couple. So the most important, easiest to understand, if you will, would be no irrigating during or within 48 hours of measurable rainfall. Broken sprinklers are required to be repaired within 24 hours of notification. No allowing for runoff with your irrigation system. You must use a shutoff nozzle when using a hose. No using water to clean hardscapes, with the only exception being for public health reasons. And then when a drought is declared, HOAs and code compliance aren't allowed to penalize for reducing your watering during these declared drought stages. So some of the collaborative efforts here amongst the agencies, we recently received approval, I should say, for funding under Prop 1 grant for Regional Water Conservation Program. And what that's going to do is empower us to provide more rebates to our constituents and also to install another demonstration garden. So some other collaborative efforts we have that we're actively working on right now would be our urban water management plan. And I'm very happy I recently had to get a bunch of data for that. And so I'm glad it's out of my court for a bit. We also have the Coachella Valley Water Management Plan. Both the Urban Water Management Plan and this plan are on a 5-year cycle. The Coachella Valley Water Management Plan is also known as SGMA, the Sustainability Groundwater Management Plan. It's just our variation here in the desert. And it is due to the state by January 2022. There's also the Salt and Nutrient Management Plan, which goes along with the SGMA plan I mentioned. And it's not just about water quantity, it's also about water quality, and water conservation contributes to that. So our active efforts here amongst all of the agencies are, first we can talk about education. So we do school presentations and educational tours. A lot of this is on pause right now with the pandemic, but much like the Academy had to pivot and try something new, we're also all actively working to find ways to still reach students now in their homes. And so community engagement, we will also do presentations for HOAs or other large groups that request it. We do tours, which are now becoming virtual as well. CV Water Counts campaign has their great mascot Splash. We do agency mailers as well as marketing and advertising, which you may see in the form of billboards, radio ads, TV ads, and internet ads. And then some of our enforcement efforts for our water waste are written warnings, citations, fines, and then during the drought, we're empowered to charge surcharges and penalties for excessive and wasteful water use. So altogether, what have we done? We as a valley have saved over 50 billion gallons of water, which equates to 300 billion venti lattes, which I appreciate. And then also that's 1 billion bathtubs or 2,000 baths per person, or 400 billion pints of beer, which is great for after work to think about. So what is the largest water guzzler here in the valley? that would be turf. So pictured here is a home as well as a golf course where they're removing the turf on both. So while it is one of our biggest water users, it's also one of the biggest areas that we're seeing a lot of activity, which is great because maybe one day we can get it to not be our biggest water user here in the valley. And so you see here, both homeowners and golf are making efforts equally. So what is our biggest water saver? Well, that's got two answers. So in second place, we have the canal. So Colorado River water is delivered here to the valley via the canal, and it is utilized for agriculture as well as large landscape. And one great thing about this is as the water is used, it percolates into the ground and hits our aquifer, so also makes it another use there for us with groundwater recharge. But the biggest and best water saver here in the valley would be the people. So I hope through all of this program, through CD Water Counts Academy, that you will be educated enough to be the one that can look at these pictures and know exactly what we're talking about and can educate your neighbors and fellow valley residents about the importance of water conservation. So what can you do to do that? So first is indoor. You can replace inefficient fixtures with efficient fixtures. 3 are mentioned here, but there are also tons of other places that you can look to replace fixtures. You can upgrade your washer, your dishwasher, install a hot water recirculating pump. Don't forget to check, your water heater as well. There's tankless water heaters now. But then you move outdoor where the bulk of our water use is, and so you can get to know your plants and that they all have individual needs. So it's really important that you understand what they want and how much water they actually need. And then periodic checks of your irrigation system. So we recommend at least once a month going around and checking your timer and walking your yard and your landscape to check your irrigation system. And then don't forget to make seasonal adjustments to your watering times. But better yet, you can install a weather-based irrigation controller, and that'll kind of take a lot of the guesswork out of it for you. And so you won't water during or after the rain. You won't water if it's too windy. You won't water if it's cool. You will water more if it's hot. All these great things all built into this without you having to do all of the work. And so as I mentioned before, make sure you use a shutoff nozzle when you're using a hose, and then replace non-functional lawn with water efficient desert native landscaping, and you can beautify your yard at the same time. So some of the freebies or resources that are available, the freebies would be indoor conservation kits, shutoff nozzles, and then there's various city programs. And some of the rebates that are offered throughout the valley are for turf conversion, irrigation upgrade, smart controller installer rebates, high efficiency toilet replacement, high efficiency washer replacement, and hot water recirculation pumps. But also check with your local water provider because we're constantly trying out new programs and changing things. So you never know what might be available, even as soon as maybe tomorrow. And so I just want to remind you that every drop does count, and we appreciate all of your efforts. So I'll take any questions. Sorry, I was kind of fast. I talk quickly.
Hi there, Jenna. Yeah, it looks like we're making good time here. Again, if anyone has questions, go ahead and type them into the Q&A section. And if you are able to, raise your hand if you want to ask Jenna a question yourself, go ahead and do that, and I will try to unmute you. So let's see if we have any questions for Jenna. One from Marlene: what is considered measurable rainfall?
So it's always a tricky question. It's really case by case basis, agency to agency. But typically it's one if the cement stays wet for a while and you can actually see that there's water on the ground. That's usually what we consider measurable rainfall. It's, again, you can have parts of the valley aren't wet at all and parts of the valley are. So we don't really go off of rain gauges, but it's really if it's something you could see and the streets get wet, the cement gets wet and they stay wet for a little while after the rain. That's what we consider measurable, or at least myself. I don't want to speak for the other agencies.
But no, yeah, I agree. Okay, so let's see. Any other questions? You have the conservation expert here at your disposal. So, and anything else anyone would like to?
Sochi, someone raised their hand in the, I think Cheryl Gelling has raised her hand. And then
Oh,
a couple more.
oh, there we go. Thank you. Okay. Here we go. Okay. Let me see if I can unmute you. Okay, Cheryl. I am allowing you to talk, Cheryl. So if you want to go
Hi.
ahead. Yep, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. My question is about, I'm in a small homeowners association of 150 homes. Would you still come out and do a presentation with that small number of homes?
Oh yeah, that's not small. We have some as small as 10, so we'll come out to any size group, or we'll via Zoom or telephone now.
Okay, I'd love to set that up with our residents here at some point. So yeah, if you could include your email address, then I can be in touch with
It's
you.
on the slide, but I'll put it in the chat too.
If it's in the slide, I'll find it. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. And that's all I had.
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, and we have someone else here. Kathy would like to ask a question. Go ahead, Kathy.
Yes, you mentioned a demonstration garden, and I didn't catch if that was something that exists now or something that you were planning on doing, and exactly what is the demonstration garden and who's it available for?
So Coachella Valley Water, we have 2 gardens. Unfortunately, with the way things are, we're closed to the public right now, so they're not open.
Right.
But I know that Desert Water Agency, I believe it's at the airport, is theirs, if I remember right.
Yes, we're working on that right now.
Okay. So right now we do have 2 here at both of our district locations in Coachella and here in Palm Desert. And so we're hoping to get them open soon to everyone.
Okay, and is it something that if we had like a garden club that we could, obviously a year from now, possibly, that we could set up a time that you could, is it something that a group would come to?
Yeah, so our one in Coachella has probably the most plants labeled on it, but our one here in Palm Desert has some as well. And then as we expand it, it'll have more. And our hope and goal with this grant is to kind of provide some sample landscape palettes. And so that one, when it's installed, will be perfect. But at any time, the other 2 are great places to go and get a look at desert landscaping.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you. We have another question from David Friedman. So if you want to go ahead.
Thank you, Sochi. David Friedman, I'm a member of the Palm Springs Sustainability Commission, and we're working very closely with DWA on a demonstration garden at the Palm Springs International Airport. We had a small working group, including Ashley Metzger from DWA, that we reviewed sort of the list of plants, all from the Lush, or nearly all from the Lush and Efficient book, which I strongly recommend as a good guide to from CVWD on what's water efficient garden materials. So we've got sort of pretty much approval from the Palm Springs City Council, hoping that that project will go out to bid in the next month or so. And depending on when the work can be done, either be planted, late spring or early fall, so that folks will be able to go there. And it's just between the airport main concourse entry and the fountain, and you'll be able to walk along and see it. And we'll put up some little signs about what each of the various plants are. So it's a nice project, and we're very pleased to work with DWA, which received some Prop 1 grant funding for that.
Great. That's great to hear you guys are so close to getting it all started. We were waiting for the official word on the grant to start our process here.
Yeah, thank you, David, for sharing that. I look forward to that as well. Okay, so we have another question from a Mr. Shuey. So
Mute, there we go.
Nope, you're
Oops.
muted again.
oops, sorry. Okay,
More time to unmute. That help?
there you go.
Are we
There you
unmuted? There we
Yep,
go.
we can hear you.
Okay. Personalized property management, and naturally we manage a lot of homeowners associations in the Coachella Valley. And I think it'd be good for your team to talk a bit about how an association should apply for different programs of getting rebates back, and also the individual homeowners, how they can make their application the easiest method, and can they get some help from your staff in doing the applications, or do they have to seek help from outside sources like their gardeners or whoever else?
So, I hate to speak for other agencies, but I think we kind of are all on the same page with this one. So we always recommend you contact us first so we can walk through everything, all the requirements for both the large landscape, so HOAs, commercial properties, as well as the residents. So we can walk through all of the terms and what we're going to ask for. Just because, if you go to your gardener first, sometimes they'll start the work and that's not what we want. We want to come out there before. So yeah, we always recommend you contact us at the agencies first, and then we can work with both, the homeowners, the HOAs, and their gardeners, however they want to do it. So yeah, we always recommend you contact us first.
Yes,
And then to apply, you can just check your agency's website.
yes, I agree 100%. Yeah, definitely go to your agency's website and definitely, talk to someone first if you can. That's always helpful. So thank you very much. Appreciate it. Any other, let's see, we have some actual questions that have been typed into the Q&A. Let's go there. Oh, okay. A question, is the square foot turf rebate $2? And I guess that depends on which agency.
Right.
Yes.
For Coachella Valley Water District area, yes.
And for Desert Water Agency as well. So, but it is always a good idea to go to the agency website, and I know everyone, has everything spelled out quite easily. So, and then let's see, there is another question. How much water does a golf course use?
So that is very situational to each golf course. Some golf courses have not all the area that's not play area is desert landscaping, and others don't have that dynamic. So it's really, based on the golf course, but we do have a golf water task force here with the district where we are constantly reviewing the water use. So I don't see like individual on the golf course. I will say though, when you're looking at the large landscapes, like a golf course, especially a golf course where the turf is their job and their livelihood, they probably have some of the most efficient watering practices. Because it's a huge area, and so it's very succinct and very smart how they approach how the watering goes. So if one station is off, they can really kind of mess their whole day up worth of watering. So I unfortunately don't have the specific numbers because, like I said, every course is kind of different. We do have one of my staff do have, though, if you wanted to give us a call, what we kind of consider an average per acre figure, but that's not necessarily going to be accurate to every golf course. So I hope that kind of answers that question.
There is another question. Someone wants to know how many gallons of water the cannabis industry is using. We will be touching on the cannabis industry during one of our later sessions. So Jenna, I don't know if you want to add anything to that, but we will be, we'll have someone touch on that later.
Yeah, it's so new. There's not as great of data as we would like. And then two, it's, still being figured out how it's going to come here to the Valley. So we don't really know specifically how it's going to affect here as this, geographical location. But it's interesting. There's lots of stuff being studied on it now, but not as much available for us to, provide.
But yeah, just hang in there because we will be touching on that in one of our later sessions.
Great.
So thank you for that question.
I see one from Matthew Frazier about a list of approved natives for turf conversion. So it was mentioned about our lush and efficient guide. That's a great guide, but I know, a lot of the agencies will have all the resources on their website. And so you can always go and look there. I don't know if we so much have a list of approved. Usually it's typically don't install any of the, plants that are not allowed in the state of California is kind of the guidance on there, but it's always just check with your water agency to see what the requirements of their programs are.
Okay, let's see. Cheryl, do you have another question?
Oh, that was it. Sorry.
Oh, that was it. Okay. Nope. Just wanted to make sure. And we have another question here. Do people with their own wells get regulated? And then it says Sunnylands is the largest user according to rumor.
So that's there's one way that water agencies are involved in that. It's most of the state. So water agencies, users with their own wells are supposed to report their water use to the water agency for the purpose of us reporting it to the state. However, as far as who regulates it, that would be the state. We don't really have a lot of enforcement abilities. It's just a matter of they have to comply. And we do bring, private pumpers, as we call them. We do ask them and invite them to come to the table when we're doing our sustainability management plans and all of those things, because we all do have to work together. But it's weird because we have to report the water use, but it's not us that enforces and comes up with the laws that dictate their use. And I don't know who the biggest private pumper is.
Okay, let's see. Anything else?
Let's see. I see are there any programs we're doing to conserve rainwater? We don't have programs that are necessarily geared towards the public, but we do have, efforts here within, I guess there kind of are, certain properties, there's building codes that require like retention basins and things like that. But nothing like within the water agencies as themselves, but we also do have a big stormwater plan out here throughout the valley, and that kind of aims to try and capture and repurpose the rainwater for groundwater recharge. So I don't know if that's what they're asking about, but that's what we do.
Whoops. Okay. Yeah. Any other last questions? Whoops.
I see one about sinkage in the groundwater from the aquifer, and I actually want to address that because recently, due to valley-wide groundwater recharge efforts, we've actually been able to lift the groundwater level. So that's going to help if there was any subsidence throughout the valley. That's going to help stop that. So subsidence is what the sinkage is, but we have been able to raise groundwater levels. And so that's, kind of something of note, an accomplishment we can report here for the valley.
Okay. Yeah, that's wonderful. Wow, we're just getting all these answered, aren't we?
Yeah.
I know. Let's see. I think, someone asking about videos. I think did you already answer that one?
We do for our tours, but as the question came up about where our demonstration gardens are, and I was thinking how they're closed, maybe that would be something we should offer. I got to run it up the higher ups though, because they're already have so many videos that staff are editing. I don't feel like I should be the one to add it to their list, but I'll mention it because I think it would be a great idea just in general.
Okay. Whoa. Well, okay. Well, I think looks like there are no more open questions, so I think we can move on. Yeah, just again wanted to thank you, Jenna and Steve, for those wonderful presentations. Again, if anyone here thinks of a question afterwards, don't forget them. You can always email them to us as well. And you can see there's our various websites for the different water agencies. And also, we will be sending you a survey following the session, just to get your input on the academy. And you can always ask a question at that point as well. So again, wow, we are doing really good on time, aren't we? Again, just I wanted to thank everyone for joining us today. This was the first of 5 sessions that will take place every Thursday. And, our next session will be on water supply. So we look forward to seeing you again next week during your lunch hour. So everyone, thanks again, and take care, and we will see you next week, okay?